2, 1.
Hi, everyone. This is going to be a quick run through of some effects that we feel on Earth here from the moon. The first thing we see on Earth that the moon does is it goes through a cycle of phases. Sometimes it appears that the moon is fully lit, and sometimes we don't see the moon at all. The second thing that happens is eclipses, both of the sun and the moon. So we see either lunar eclipses or solar eclipses. And the third thing is tides. The moon actually causes the oceans to rise and fall here on Earth. So principle number one is that moon phases are caused by the moon orbiting Earth. As the moon goes around Earth, you can notice that it's always half lit up by the sun. Now, this is an important point. The moon does not produce its own light. The light on the moon is caused by the sun lighting up half of it. And as the moon makes its way around Earth, we either see a portion, all, or none of that lit half. This whole process, from when the moon starts in one place and goes all the way around, it orbits Earth once actually every 27.3 days. However, the new cycle of moon phases takes 29 and a half days. So in other words, if we're starting here at the new moon phase, it's going to take 29 and a half days to start another full cycle of moon phases. And this is because Earth is revolving around the sun as the moon revolves around Earth. So although the moon will orbit Earth once in 27.3 days, it needs that extra time to catch up because the Earth is also orbiting the sun. So here we have a picture of the first quarter moon phase. And if we get a question like, okay, which position of the moon around Earth do we experience this first quarter phase in, we kind of have to take a couple steps here. The first thing that I always do is look at what side of the moon is lit up. And in this case, we can see that the right side is lit up. So from our perspective, it looks like half the moon is lit up and it's on the right side. So now our goal is to put ourselves in the place of this diagram and say, okay, well, which position 1 through 8 would the moon be in for it to look like this, where it's lit up on the right side? And if we think about it for a second, we come to the conclusion that it is position number 3, because if we're here on Earth and we're looking up, it would appear that the right side is lit up. And you'll notice that we only ever see half the moon at a time. So this half would appear to be in the shadow, and this part would be lit up. And from our perspective here on Earth, it would look like that was the right side lit up and the left side in the shadow. You can see also that the full moon is in this phase over here, or in this position 5. And this is because in this position, it looks like the full moon is lit up and we don't see any part of the shadow. So moving on to principle number 2, the moon causes eclipses. Lunar eclipse is caused by the shadow of Earth covering the moon. So this happens when we have the sun, the Earth, and the moon right here. This can only happen in the full moon phase because this is how all 3 celestial bodies are lined up: sun, Earth, and moon. And this actually happens when the Earth casts a shadow on the moon and it looks like the moon is being fully covered up. On the flip side of things, we also have a solar eclipse. This is caused by the moon blocking out light from the sun for areas on Earth. Now, the area that will experience a solar eclipse is very, very small, and you can kind of see that in this diagram here. This little tiny area right here is really the only place on Earth that is experiencing the solar eclipse, and the rest of the Earth is not really getting that effect. This only happens in a new moon phase when the alignment is the sun with the moon in the middle and the Earth over here. Eclipses do not happen every new or full moon phase. You've probably noticed this before. You've seen full moons and you've not always seen a lunar eclipse. This is because in reality, the Earth, the moon, and the sun don't always line up perfectly. Okay, and moving on to principle number 3, the tides here on Earth are caused by the moon. So if you look here on your left, you see a picture of high tide. So the water line is all the way up here. And on the right-hand side, you see that the tide has gone out. And this is all due to changes of the sun, the earth, and the moon. So you can see here that there's a couple different kinds of tides. The first one we're going to talk about is neap tides. Neap tides are the less extreme types of tides. They will happen when the earth, the moon, and the sun make right angles to each other. And in other words, the first and third quarter phases. So what's really happening here is that, going to go back for a second. What's really happening here is that the sun and the moon are kind of canceling out each other's gravity. So when the moon is using its gravity to pull water this way, the sun is using its gravity to pull water this way. So they're in kind of a tug of war battle here, and that causes really a canceling effect of each other. And this is where the tides are not really extreme. There's no big difference between high and low tide. On the other hand, we have something called spring tides. Spring tides are extreme tides, very high tides and very low tides. This happens when the sun, the moon, and the earth are all in straight lines. In other words, in the new moon phase or the full moon phase. And in this case, the gravity from the sun and the moon are actually working together to pull water to one side of the planet. So this is just kind of some basics about what we see here on Earth from the moon, the effects the moon give us. There is a little bit more to the story, but we'll get to that at a later date.